We're hot. Okay, it is 4:31 on Thursday, January 23rd, 2020, and I call this meeting of the Meridian Historic Preservation Commission to order. Roll call, Blaine Johnston. Here. If my pen works. Don Cronk. Here. Josh Everts.
Here.
J.C. Neri.
Here.
Brian Fitzgerald.
Here.
Donna Lusigan.
Here.
And Jody Alt is not here. Councilwoman Jessica Peralta, ex officio, is not here. Before the adoption of the agenda, we need to amend it, move new business, at least the election of president and vice president, so we need to change that to item number, behind item number 2. How's that?
Did you say 2?
Yeah, we'll amend it to move those elections to just behind the adoption of the agenda. So we'll just call it 2A.
Mr. President, I move we adopt the agenda as amended.
I'll second that.
Motion to adopt the agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. So, election of president for the coming year. Nominations? Go for it, Raul.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Everett.
I would like to nominate Blaine Johnson to maintain his leadership, stellar, stalwart leadership of the Historic Preservation Commission for 2020.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Everett, seconded by Commissioner Neri for Blaine Johnson to remain as president of the Meridian HPC. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Election of vice president of the commission for 2020.
Blaine.
I can't do both.
No, but are we presidents or are we chairs?
We're presidents.
But it says chair.
I know.
Well, I feel like we need to clarify some things here. Councilor Neri,
It's
it's going to greatly affect.
So, Mr. President, members of the commission, you are correct. The correct titles in the bylaws are
Okay.
president and vice president, so.
Thank you for that point of clarification. I secede the remainder of my time.
President,
Secede?
I believe you, in your amended agenda, said it was president. So
President, yeah.
we noted that.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Everett doesn't hear very well.
No.
Mr. President,
Ms. Neri.
I move to nominate Josh Everts as vice president for the 2020 year.
Motion by Commissioner Neri, seconded by Commissioner Cronk for Josh Everts to remain vice president of the HPC for 2020. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Approval of last minutes. Oh, my mouse isn't working.
Mr. President,
Ms. Neri.
if there were no changes and corrections from what was sent out, I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Neri, seconded by Commissioner Everts for approval of December 16, 2019 meeting minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Approval of our monthly financial statements. Commissioners again, what's your question?
So the total shows 14.7 at the bottom, but then there's another total of 14.4, and at the top, budget for miscellaneous 3, and then budget for miscellaneous expenses. So is the 14.4 plus the 3 plus the 3 the total of the 14.7? Why do we have two 300s?
I believe the first 300 was a budget amount. The second 300 is what we were going to pay, if I'm not mistaken.
Mr. President.
Missionary.
Yes, so I think if you look on the budget, I think aren't they separated by Historical Society and Historic Preservation? So the city has traditionally budgeted a small amount, basically for office supplies. We talked last month about the materials for preservation, things like boxes and papers and things like that. So the city has separated out what the society needs are in regards to office material and then what the preservation needs are. So if there are other miscellaneous needs for the 300, I think that's where that number comes from. So the 14.4, if you look at that, that's all related to the preservation, and the top 300 is related to the Historical Society. We used to budget for their phone, was the other thing. We don't have to budget for that anymore. So I think that's why it's separated.
Sorry, Mr. President. Mr. Neri, I think it's an error, or I think there's a line item that's not included, because that 300 at the top, like I just did fast math, plus the 14,100 comes out to the 14,400. So I don't know if the 300 is, there's that whole films there under, it's what, line item 53,801. Is that the additional 300? We are still missing 300
Oh, I see what
somewhere.
you're saying.
Yeah.
So it
And
could be,
maybe
yeah, we'll
it
definitely
was a
have to go look at
windfall.
that. So, yeah, we could definitely go look at that, so. 'Cause you're right, it doesn't add up, but they were separated for a reason, but you're right, it is $300 off there, so.
So does it need to be amended?
No, I wouldn't amend. This is the finance department has created it, so you really can't amend it. So if you want to put it over a month to approve it, so you know what it's for, that's fine.
Mr. President,
Mr. Evans.
I recommend we approve this highly confusing financial statement for last month
From
as
the,
represented here
from the city?
from the city, from whoever. I'd also like to withdraw all my negative comments about Councilwoman Perot, as she has now shown up for our meeting officially.
I appreciate that. As long as you got them on public record.
Yes, they are on public record and on video, I believe.
Fantastic.
Mr. President, I'll second Commissioner or Vice President Everett's motion with clarification expected next month.
Motion by Commissioner Everett, seconded by Commissioner Neri for approval of monthly financial statements with clarification from the City Finance Department for next month. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. On to old business. Brandon Hall's Meridian Video Tour Project. Welcome.
Once again, it's been
A day or
a little
two.
while, a year or so maybe. Last time I was here, we were looking at other things from faraway places mostly, and now we're here looking at something from right across the street. And it's worth noting, I would say, like I was kind of mentioning before, that when you look at this building right here, that this is already a historic project, and it really exemplifies what we have here in Meridian with tremendous growth. I don't know if there's one of these is better than another. As a 1991 graduate of Meridian High, I can tell you that this town has changed quite a bit. And when I drive down Main Street and I see the areas to the north of the post office that still have some of the old homes, it's not hard to imagine those going the way of the buildings in downtown Boise, some of the beautiful Victorian homes in Central Addition or whatever. So I'm here to kind of show you what we ended up arriving at with this tour, and also my hopes to discuss some of the other ideas I've had, and I'm sure ones that you guys will have to capture other historic parts of the old Meridian, but also things that we might even take for granted, that their absence or disappearance, we would certainly know it then, but so things like the Meridian Speedway, things like maybe the turkey farms out on Meridian Road, things that, some of the areas along Main Street, maybe some of the areas back a block or two where some of the other buildings were, where there's at least future planned growth along the railway. So I'm here. I'm here to answer any questions. Some of the new stuff since, as you can see, then if I was just to give you a quick little minute sort of tour, we've come up with a very simple system to move between locations around the city that can be categorized into groups. Like the Black Cat Farms, the latest edition. Some of you might recognize this old blue house out here along the freeway, just right past 10 Mile Road. I don't know about anybody else, but it certainly doesn't stretch my imagination to imagine this entire thing developed within a decade, even though they've said it won't be. So this is a chance where we have not only went out and captured a moment in time forever, but and this one was kind of tricky. It kind of happened during the changeover with the coordinator, and so I was determined to get it finished, and so I had done a lot of stuff out at the Black Cat Farm, and so in some ways this is kind of telling the story of like a classic mint farm in Meridian, but at the same time showing different locations that the different processes are happening at. I know you guys have had a chance to look at it, and you can, and I won't belabor it too much. But we've got a great start here to our own little project that is just us looking in the mirror and freezing it in time for the future, where people will know more about Meridian in 15 or 20 years perhaps, with the preservation of these than really a lot more could tell them other than just someone's story about what it used to be like. Meridian's a unique place. It's grown by 15 times or something. I don't know what just population-wise, I think there were 7,000 people when I grabbed, maybe 10, maybe it really grew for a couple years in those late 80s and early 90s. But even this farm we're looking at here, this is out on Black Cat Road. Not hard to imagine that property, because it's just without going too much into it all. I think that's what you guys are here. Your mission is. I just want to show you what I'm doing here, and hope that I can be a future partner to expand this and to start to give it a story, and maybe together we can work to slowly incorporate more even into what we have so far. More stories, more historic photos, more text descriptions that might tell a little bit about the locations. And there's a lot more to do still. So, but I thought it would be good to come and see you guys all again, show you what we've got. It does give it a kind of a deliverable for this point, but at the same time, it's just like Legos. And this is like a little tiny Lego we've put together, but we've got a pile of them right here. We could build a big Lego. We could keep it going. We could even take preemptive steps when there's known development coming to get it before it's gone. In every way it's perishable as a historic entity if we want to preserve it as it is. So I think we have a good start. So I hope I can answer any questions or anything else.
Mr. President.
Mr. Edwards.
Brandon, this exceeds my expectations. Like, as somebody who's familiar with some of the tear down that's occurred on Main Street, the capture of just those two buildings, like, I'm glad we got it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the city does have to transform itself, and it's got to grow with everything else that's going on. But even that snapshot of that corner is super, super meaningful. The map in the bottom that you have on there, does that just give you an overlay map where you can then click into?
It was really just a very basic effect of like, that way you would be able to see where things are in comparison to each other.
Oh, got it.
And so when it's up now, you can see that the number one is the actual location. It's not really to be like a Google map where you could zoom right in and see the exact.
But you can navigate by that.
But you can, yeah.
Okay.
So you see this one over here, you're like, oh, Pine Street School. And now here we are outside of Pine Street School. And I love this little, this is such a great little thing to just freeze in time, even something that's not of our time. This is giving, it's like Little House on the Prairie or something. But
Yeah, it's
and there's a
beautiful.
lot of information here that tell, a gallery of the school itself, and these are ones I took, of course, but that you can add historic photos. There's photos over here of the original teacher who was here. Here's the mayor and the teacher after her 93rd birthday, it says, who had taught in there. And so, and that's really what the goals of it are, is not only to capture things where there's still historic things present, but there's also sometimes a lot of collateral of historic photos. There might be one of the old film clips of FDR coming to town or something. Who knows? Maybe he drove through Meridian and there's a clip somewhere. But the more we can, these tours, the 360 becomes like a website, but it's not a graphical website, it's an image. So you can still put if it was a hotel, you could have the restaurant menu or the check into your hotel buttons. But instead here, you put things exactly where they go, exactly where they're relevant. So somebody who looks at it in the future, or even today, will be able, it's like a choose your own adventure, kind of.
I think as a platform for our commission, I think it's super strategic. I just think we're in a day and age where people are consuming information and history in these kind of platforms. I don't know what this looks like in a mobile environment, but
It's made for mobile
Yeah,
too,
good,
so you
good.
can
So
look
it's
at it on a
mobile-enabled.
phone, a
Perfect.
tablet.
this is where our consumers are at. So to have something like this that looks like it's very scalable,
Yeah.
and we can take little piecemeal approaches where we can incrementally grow.
I've got a question for the two of you.
Yeah.
How hard would this be
Impossible. Oh, I'm
to-
sorry.
to put into our Tour Buddy app?
I will answer that. There's no correlation between the two. However, we can place hyperlinks inside of the Tour Buddy app. So if we want to hyperlink to the anchor for, let's say, Pine Street School in that, we could absolutely do that, 100%.
I think that may be something we want to look at.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is one of the beauties of actually the way this is built too, is it doesn't have to be embedded into something or anything like that. It always opens in a new window. So in any platform, on any whatever, you could have the words, view the virtual tour. You click it, it opens in a new window. You have a beautiful thumbnail from the tour, one of the still images. View the virtual tour, it says. You click it, it opens in a new window. So it makes it so it can go, as far as being added to like maybe an internal components of an app that's been built, that might be different because obviously the app is already up. But if the link is there, it's very simple for access. It also has Google Analytics embedded into it. So in that respect, sometimes if there was an event going on and it was farm days or dairy days, and you could put out something saying, hey, check out the Black Cat Farm, Meridian Historical, you could send out a blast to anyone on that email list, and then you would be able to track back how much traffic came back and see what they looked at. It gives you a sense in the end to kind of find out what people are interested in. And sometimes that's a way also to know where to go. So this I pulled up here is just another tour that I just finished in the last couple weeks. It's the Bass Museum down at the Cyrus Jacobs Uberaga House. And I just thought I'd show you guys this too really quick, just so it's up here, like another one where you can go. This is one single structure in town that, and seeing they've got text descriptions that go with each location, and there's kind of some other stuff in it that kind of, it's like a little bit more. The resolution on the screen is really big, so the menu is kind of covering up some stuff, but again, it's got a number of, like you can go to the Basque Fronton Court and learn a little bit about the game. You kind of hear about this all the time. I mean, most people know this is in downtown Boise. But this is a similar little project, kind of. One that can be, we've talked about doing stuff regionally, related to Basque culture in the area, and from Jordan Valley to up in Ketchum where they herd the sheep. And so it's telling a story. And that's what I hope I could leave with on this, is that the Tour of Meridian is to tell a story about this place. And it can be embedded with all these historic photos that show how it's been, show what it looks like. It's freezing it today, but we can continue adding to it. I mean, I can take a shot in that same spot where the building, when the new one is built, and we could show what it looks like in 2018 and what it looks like in 2021. And it's almost like a time lapse or something. I've got some examples of that, but I won't. I mean, with Mount Vernon and stuff where they've restored a lot of rooms. And so I've went and redone panos in them, and all of a sudden it's like time travel. Yeah. And so looking forward, I mean, there's a lot of great things we can do, and I just, I'm here, I live here, I want to, make this something that is very special for the future and the children.
Mr. President?
Ms. Neary?
I think that the project's fantastic. I love the mint farms specifically because of Drew Egger and I think his legacy to the city, especially as that industry is changing. He was a great partner for this commission. He was a great partner every time that the city have reached out and wanted to learn about what it is that he did. I would love to see us expand this with even like the History Center. It's hard for them to be open and available the hours that people want to visit, right? Their volunteer group and their senior group, and that as life continues to go on, it just becomes more challenging for them to be here. And it would be interesting to see what this would look like if we tried to expand it into the walking tour, into the properties where the owners have experienced a desire to connect with us more, and maybe they would let us go in. Because I know that we've tried to do that during our tours in May. But that's still challenging to do, right? And we're dealing with a smaller audience. But if we had the ability, just one property at a time, as the budget could afford to get in and take some of these photos where, however, we're not trouncing through their house, right, on a regular basis, and we could still hold events where this can be shown. I would love to see an integration with the school district on the third grade tours. Like, I think there's a lot of possibility here, especially if we can help those third graders check that technology requirement. I think it would be a cool thing to do. So I think the project's fantastic, and I would love to look forward to enhancing it this year for sure. It's a cool thing.
I'm just really impressed with the quality and everything that's gone in. That Main Street shot and going back, and there was a shot from 1950 looking down Main Street to show some of that history is just, to me, it's amazing. And the old wooden water pipe that's just embedded in it.
A piece, yeah. Yeah, well, I'm of the belief that there's probably a lot more historic photos than the few we dug up here too. And I bet there's photos that we could construct almost an old-time story out of about the history of the city, but then place them inside of modern 360s. So you have, because people, one of the things for me as a kid is I used to love like Boise's history downtown and a lot of the old buildings. You'd always see pictures of like the Eastman Building and the old St. Alphonsus Hospital and these things, the Veterans Home out at Veterans Park. But when you go downtown, there's parking lots, or there were back in those days, and you could never really it was really hard to figure out where all those things were. And so to have the 360s taken along major intersections and things, you could have these clickable points on the corner where people could see where things used to be. And so it's in some ways with the old historic collateral, it presents like this shot right here of town. It's boom. And there's a great deal of zoom and but some of these blocks, even to like one block over and one block down, there could easily, I imagine, be a capture of just downtown. 2020 Meridian frozen in time, and I bet you by 2022 we'd all be just like we are right now, looking right here. I pulled up today and I said, I guess the pano's already historic. So
Yep.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, we're making history every day.
So if you guys are happy with what we've got so far with this, then is what I'll do is I will kind of wrap up and finish the tour, and I'll put it at a final link. Right now, that tour 3 is kind of like a holding place link while it's in development. I'll give it a final link and I'll send it over. And then the other option there is too is if you want to host it on the city site or something like that. I mean, I could deliver it for that, or you can just point it to the link, which sometimes is easier. If there's a fix, I can fix it quickly without having any. I'm happy to host it for free, so.
Mr. President,
Mr. Everett?
what is our process as we go forward? Because I feel very strongly this is a great platform for us to kind of assess, because things are moving very, very quickly. And especially in our downtown where I don't want to miss opportunities. I know that there are developments happening right now between the UP property. There's a bunch of work actually happening on Broadway right now. I know there's some stuff that's going to be going down on Idaho Avenue. How do we maybe get ahead of this a little bit? And do we have an understanding of how much it would cost as we, so we can make some, or what's the process, for us to get a quote for different things we might want to do?
I think we just need to identify those areas, whether it's an intersection or that North Main or whatever, and say, okay, can we get photographs from here to here? Talk to Mr. Hall, say, okay, what would it cost to get those photographs? We just have to itemize,
Yeah. Okay.
prioritize what we want photographed. So that's a goal for us, is we need to
And
prioritize.
yeah, and much like the Black Cat Farm, I did a lot of those stills to get more for less, because the 360s are more, but the stills could be done a little bit more cost effectively. So I thought, rather than having 20 360s at the farm to get all the equipment and different aspects of it, we're able to, same with the city too, there may be some building in particular that a still photograph that would be one of those clickable points would be just as good, as long as the intersection is there. But then that way you could focus in on one building, like, I know some of the ones over on like Idaho and a block with the, great old historic to Meridian buildings and things. So it'd be interesting to see what used to live in them and the people that used to stand in front of them and all that kind of stuff. It's, fascinating, so. Okay.
Any other comments?
Yes, Mr. President. Do we know, this doesn't belong to us yet, right?
Does not belong to us yet.
Do we know what this presentation in its completed form, as he's presented it, and I guess finish up what that's would cost?
It's done. It's gonna cost nothing else, at least for what's right here. What I'm going to do
We've already
here.
paid for it.
Yes.
Okay, so it's paid for.
Yeah.
And so now we're just thinking about what we're going to do next.
Right.
Yeah.
And may I ask what the cost was for this? Does anybody remember?
I would say, if I recalled, it was $2,800 for Black Cat Farm, and the Main Street and Pine Street schools, I think, were like $2,400, if I recall. So it was probably, this whole thing so far was somewhere around between $500 and $5,600 is my guess. Because usually there's a flat rate for the 360s and a flat rate for stills, and I ended up doing about 3 times as many stills anyway. It was just more of like, let's get this going, and whatever could be gotten for a budget, I was willing to do it for, to establish it, and it would continue to be like that. It really is like Legos, where we say, so if going forward we'll have we want 3 360s and 10 stills, so that would be, you would be able to calculate how much it would cost before you asked me to do it. Because, yeah.
Beautiful.
I try to keep it real simple and stuff, and, it's better to do it than to not do it, so. Do you have any questions, Brian?
He's deep in thought, though. Okay,
Okay. Well,
beautiful. I love it. I think it's
great.
great.
Well, this is the link, and I'll send a link to the email addresses I have when I'll update it. There's I'm going to go through and just double check the coding and programming, everything, make sure there's nothing I missed. And then I'll put the final link up then with this one as it is now. And then, we can talk and, continue on with any ideas from out of all, that you guys come up with about different locations or things. I think the Speedway is definitely a great idea for an extension of this. And we can keep adding these names in this left-hand bar. It would say Meridian Speedway, and underneath that, it might, whatever it could be, So,
Mr. President, once I get the link, we'll also take the Pine Street School, because that'll be a discrete one, and put that inside the app and test it. It's not going to be an issue, because it launches an external browser. So, but we'll test that internally and then go with that as well, just to confirm that.
Perfect.
okay. All right, well, thank you very much, and nice to see you all
Thank
again.
you so much for all your work.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Missionary.
can we make this tour discussion maybe one of the items that we have on our agendas every month? We just have those placeholders.
Yes.
And I think we should do that. That way, in the instance we learn of a new development where we're become aware of something that's going to be torn down or, built or whatever, we can have that already on, so we don't have to be a little bit behind the curve.
I think it's a good idea. We can always just put that as an old business item.
Yeah, I think that would be good. I mean, just based on our budget, we have a decent amount of money, and obviously we still need to have kind of a strategic conversation about really how we're going to spend our money this year beyond training and kind of maintaining some of our obligations, but it's pretty fluid if we wanted to move some money around to really focus on some of these areas that we know are going to be developed by the end of the year. So just good to continue that conversation.
Mr. President,
Sure.
I would offer that we should get ahead of it. There are 2 intersections right now that are going to undergo, that already have historic properties that are being worked on right now. So we got the intersection of 2nd and Broadway. So that project will kick off in April, but they're already doing work on the old saddle shop and everything. So we got an opportunity even right now where they're tearing down the facade on that building. And then I think the intersection of Idaho and 2nd, just a block up, where you've got, Idaho Building, Bank Exchange, you got all that stuff, because I know that there are 127 Club already sold, Idaho Independent Bank already sold, and there's going to be a new project going in there. So not counting the what might be going into Murray's on the corner. So I feel like we're going to see movement on those in the next 3 months. Speedway's not going anywhere. I agree, the Speedway would be great, but those 2 intersections are going to change in the next 4 months. So it might be appropriate to get a quote and find out what it would take to at a minimum, get the 360 shots to get those kind of locked in before they.
So you're looking at,
Broadway and 2nd,
Broadway
and
and 2nd.
Idaho and 2nd.
okay,
Mr. President, perhaps we could start some kind of a wish list on that. And it seems like Josh has a pretty good pulse on what's popping for, So if we had like a couple of projects, and then on an ongoing basis, what we've checked off, and just kind of have a wish list, and it could change because things change. But
right. And I think that's what Ms. Nary's comment is, if we always keep this as an ongoing, not necessarily as Brandon Holes, but just video tour projects or tour projects, then we can update that monthly and say, what's come up that we need to look at.
Mr. President,
Ms. Nary.
with whole photography, I know that for this particular one, we did a scope of work. Do we have like an ongoing contract with them, or every time that we do this, are we approving a new contract and a new scope of work, like it has to go in front of council, or is it just kind of a blanket thing and we're just approving the budget side of it? How did we do that?
So, Mr. President, members of the commission, Commissioner Neri, I think we did an individual contract, but if it's the desire of this commission is for us to engage Mr. Hull for an ongoing service contract with a scope of work and a pricing and all of that, we can certainly have that conversation and do that. That's not a problem.
I would think we need to do that, only because then we will have to wait for council, right, to approve that agreement every time that we do this.
I agree with you. Mr. Nary, do we need to bring a motion before the commission for that process to take place, or to have an ongoing service contract with?
Yes, if you folks would make a motion and vote on that direction, then we can take it from there to do that.
And, Mr. President, Commission, I move to enter into an ongoing service contract with Whole Photography for additional historic imagery for the website, walking tour website.
I second.
Motion by Commissioner Neri, seconded by Commissioner Lucigan for ongoing service contract with Hull Films for our virtual tour. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Mr. President, I'm over here. Sorry, I was interrupting Audrey when you were speaking. I want to clarify, Commissioner Neri wants a standing item to discuss a video tour and tour projects on your monthly. Okay, I just want to make sure we captured that because I was interrupting when you.
Yeah, so under old business, each month, we would just have a line item. It could just be line item A as an ongoing discussion for virtual tour projects.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Commissioner Remmer.
while I appreciate people acknowledging my knowledge of downtown things, that is where my knowledge ends. So I don't want to discount, because I agree with Commissioner Neri here that the Mint Farm was stunning. So I will be a huge champion of everything that happens in Old Town, but somebody's going to have to carry the water for everything else.
That works. Any further discussion? Okay.
Sorry, just brief comment. It might be a good time for us to pull out the old strategic plan. The last time we had TAG Photography or TAG Consulting come in and do a windshield survey for us, they went through and did some of these areas that were historic based on like irrigation features and things like that. Those would be the ones that might be outside of the scope, kind of like our Mint Farm. And I think that's on the city's website. In fact, I'm like 90% sure it is. It might just pull it out and maybe take a look at it, because that might be a good, some of the farming stuff to start
Okay.
looking at. We did it as part of when there was the state highway expansion. We had
Highway
TAG come out.
16, yeah.
Yeah, so there's that whole area that we've already identified and would probably have a good grasp on what would be going in that area next, just based on what TAG put together for us already.
If it's not on, I'm sure the city's got it. I think I've got a copy of it.
I think I'm pretty sure that we have it out there already on the site, but if not, I think we have a copy.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll look at that survey and see what's out there. Okay, on to 5B, review walking tour brochures to choose layout for order.
Mr. President, I put them in presentation mode side by side, if that's helpful.
Commissioner Edwards.
The left one's unacceptable. I would just like to say that the right one is the one that we should be choosing, and I feel very strongly about that.
How strongly do you feel?
I'm really feeling very, very strong. We're introducing a big blue blob that, while interesting, is not relevant to our brand or our identity. Even though it's the city colors, I just feel like that right is much more subtle. If you wanted to increase the size on it a little bit, that would be fine, but I just think introducing the blue takes away.
I totally agree with you. As much as it is the city colors, that blue, your eyes are drawn to that rather
Yeah.
than to.
Correct. Roger that. Affirmative. But that's just my thought.
Mr. President,
Ms. Neri?
I would agree. The only thing I see on the left image is the logo, and I like our logo, I do, but it's not the logo. So I would second option 2 on the right-hand side there, and using the color palette that's more appropriate for the tour.
Any other comments?
I did like Josh's idea of making it just a little bit bigger.
Yes, yes. I think you could pull that out and make it another 15% bigger than that. It'd look really good. The color's beautiful.
So that it does not interfere with the image of the post office.
That building's ugly anyways. Cover it up.
I disagree, but that's personal opinion.
I love that building.
Can we use the logo on the right, but put it in the lower left corner and make it a little larger?
No. Well, actually, that's an interesting thing. So who's doing this right now? Do we have a graphic person at the city?
Mr. President, Mr. Everts, we do not at the city. This was being done by the printing company. I'm trying to remember.
Is it Greg?
Yes, I'm not sure it's Greg. I think someone left there,
Okay.
and whoever got back to me is who sent these. But same Modern Printers?
Yeah, Modern Printers.
So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
someone
yeah.
else at Modern Printers.
Mr. President,
Mr. Everett?
would it be appropriate for me to get the files from Modern Printer and do this correctly and then return it to Modern Printers? Because I agree. I think you could do something with that logo that's down in the lower left to tie it back into that hole, grab a map and take a step back. And you could make this look really snazzy. That's a quick fix on our end. I'm happy to do that. I would love the opportunity.
I have no problems with that.
Okay.
Mr. President and Commissioner Everett, would we lose the brown in the logo if we put it down in the brown part of the?
Not if he's.
No, not if I do it. No, because we're gonna punch that thing out. Well, yeah, we work with Modern Printers all the time. So the artist that did this logo for us works for me. So we will just get the right files and make this look spectacular.
Okay.
If you in fact trust me. Or do we have to? When is this being printed? Soon.
As soon as we approve it, I think.
Do you want me to do the work and then approve it next meeting?
Do the work and we'll.
Beautiful. Done.
Before spring and all the kids are out.
Yeah.
Easy, easy. Directed at me. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Everts. Any further discussion on the layout? Okay, we'll go on to discussion of historical atlas sales to the History Center. And I know the atlases have been printed. I think we're trying to just figure out what price. I saw them last month. Ms. Neri, you probably know more than me.
I don't know if that's true necessarily.
Mr. President, me again, sorry. We do have samples of them. We actually have, I believe, 50 were ordered, so they are in the city clerk's office. And Mr. Neri was able to, at the last meeting, clarify that they could not profit from them, so the cost of those to print was $15.50 each. So my understanding is that has to be the cost passed on to the purchaser.
Yes, Mr. President. I think the outstanding item from last month too, I appreciate that. Chris, that's exactly what I have in my notes too. We were going to find out if we needed to adopt a fee schedule because that, we don't have a fee right now. And then just clarify that the clerk's office was good to be the, I don't know, the
Go-between.
waymaker of that, yeah.
So, Mr. President, members of the commission, Commissioner Neri, so what we've discussed since the last meeting was, one, we were waiting for Audrey to get on board, because we thought that'd be helpful. We do need to process as a fee, so there's a mechanical process that has to take place, and we were kind of waiting a little bit of time to get that done. Then we talked about the logistics. So originally, the idea was to have the people pay at the clerk's office and pick it up at the History Center. We think it makes more sense to display it at the History Center and just go pay for it and pick it up at the clerk's office. Easier for control, easier for money, less onerous to the History Center folks to deal with, but people at least can view it there, which is where they'd be likely to view it, and if they want to purchase it, they'll just be directed to the clerks. So we worked all that out. So the next step, asked Audrey and Emily Kane from my office to work together to get the process going, to get the printing done and all of that public noticing needed for the fee. Again, we were just trying to get Audrey on board and kind of get her assimilated in, and then we'll do that next. So I don't see a huge rush to buy them. So I think the little pause on the pricing and having to hold off selling them hasn't really impacted that. So
Okay.
Mr. President,
Ms. Neri.
Mr. Neri, do we have to do the fee schedule for that with a public hearing? It'll have to be a hearing, or is it, yes?
yes.
Okay. Got it.
Yep. So we'll have to advertise, put it on the council agenda, add it to a
Okay.
council meeting.
We will make sure somebody is there to say something in support of passing the fee schedule.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Any further discussion on the Atlas? Okay, we will go on to 6B, discussion of a 5-year plan and creation of work groups. I met with Audrey earlier. She just wanted some background and some history on HPC. And this was one of the things we had talked about was creating work groups, smaller commissions, for lack of a better term, for education, community outreach, and preservation, I think, were the 3 that we came up with. To meet outside our normal meeting time here. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Neri, but those work groups, if they're meeting, still have to be noticed?
Yes.
Okay, so, I would probably be involved somewhat in all of them. My, for lack of a better term, desire is to focus on historic preservation and listing of properties and buildings. With that being said, does anybody else have any desires or interest in which groups that they would like to be involved with?
Mr. President, do we have a list of groups that are available?
We have education, so we used to, and I don't think we're going to do it this year, we used to have the 4th grade teachers, 3rd grade teachers come in, and they would do a continuing education session here that we basically funded. We paid for their teacher staff to come in and do it. We provided a lunch for them, and they would get their continuing education credits for at least a portion of their CEUs for a year. Do we want to continue doing that and for the teachers, or do we want to open that up for the entire public? So that would be an education process. Community outreach would be liaison between us and arts, parks, planning and zoning, so that we know what they're doing, they know what we're doing. And then preservation is what it is. So those are the 3 groups that we've kind of come up with.
And do we currently have committees formed for those?
No. Before Hillary left, I think she was trying to create a Google Docs form. I don't know if it ever came about. Ms. Neri?
Mr. President, she did create the form. We've had several commissioner changeovers, though, since that point. Enough so that I think it's probably just worth starting over and just making that happen. And we started talking about scheduling too, but of course, that was, I think, in July, I think is what my notes say.
Yeah.
So all of our lives have shifted and our schedule availability is completely different too. So I think we start from scratch,
Just start from scratch.
which will be great for our new commissioners because
Yeah.
they can start at the beginning as opposed to feeling like they're jumping in the middle. So.
Thank you.
So it's a 5-year plan. It's nothing we need to just rush in right now and say, this is what we're going to do. I think my feeling is, again, we'll just on-go-it is going to be a continuing discussion item we have every month. Think about it for this next month, and then we'll meet in February. We'll discuss it again. Let us know where you're at, what your interests lie in, where you'd like to be.
Mr. President, would you like me to make that Google Doc and send it out before the next month's meeting?
Yes, please.
Will that Google Doc include times that those meetings are going to be meeting so that it will kind of give an idea of what people want to sign up for?
Mr. President,
Mr. Everett,
might I offer a suggestion?
you may.
I think between now and next meeting, I would love to identify maybe a chairperson for each of these kind of 3 committees, somebody, one of us that would take the lead, not that there couldn't be cross-participation. And then it would be incumbent on that person at that point to kind of set a schedule for frequency. Because I think some of these commissions or some of these efforts, these working groups are going to require more frequency and some are going to be less. So maybe we think about, where we might fit in, but I think we need to identify somebody who's going to lead the working group. I think if we're just a loose association, one of us stuckies are going to have to own the working group for it to actually move and do its job. So I would suggest we focus on that, and then next month we agree to those things, maybe look at where we want to participate in those, and then for the following month, maybe month March, then the lead of that working group would come back and say, hey, talk to my team, this is when we intend to meet, and this is the frequency and stuff like that, so we can get those things noticed and allow for any public participation.
Mr. Neri, if we come up with chairs for those working groups tonight, and they email members back and forth, does the city clerk's office need to be copied on those emails just for,
So, Mr. President, members of the commission, emails in regards to like when to meet?
as no,
Discussion,
more than anything?
no, we shouldn't email. That's what we have to have public meetings for. So emails, if you're trying to coordinate a meeting, is fine.
Okay.
The clerk's office doesn't have to care about that. But if it's about discussion of the topics, that needs to be done in a meeting.
Okay,
Great. Perfect.
I just need a clarification.
Roger that.
Mr. President?
Ms. Neri.
Perhaps what we could do between now and that time is create the Google Doc with here's our 3 committees and sort of what the premise is, right? The summary of what you've just explained of what each of those focuses would be, people, us as commissioners can say, yes, we'll participate in these ones, and if you have a desire or the ability to step in as chairperson to help facilitate some of that, maybe communicate that so that it's all handled then in a meeting, so that there's no chatter to violate open meeting laws.
Since I'm not knowledgeable in Google Docs, if we set this up and we have our 3 working groups, and Commissioner Neri adds something, and then Commissioner Everett says, well, I think this, can those documents state, okay, on such a date at such a time, Commissioner Neri did this date, such a time, Commissioner Everett did that?
Yes, but we can't actually conduct any business that way.
No,
So,
as long as they're writing notes in their thoughts.
yes, as far as their availability and things, the Google, so if she creates it as a Google form, it'll come to us like a blank form with check boxes, right? And you'll just
Okay.
check, and yes, it does timestamp
Okay.
your involvement with the form. If we were to do any sort of documents, comments, things like that, Google will timestamp all of that. But unless we're talking about when is a good time to meet, we don't want to do any of that.
Right.
So it might be, I have the doodle poll that we used like in November when we were talking about setting up a special meeting. I think unless people's schedules have changed dramatically since November, I think we might have a baseline of what days and times people like basically can't meet. And perhaps that's what we need to provide, is just when we're not available. Because beyond that, when we are available, we'll have to conjoin with when there's a meeting space available and when we have staff available too. So, well, that's going to be a larger operation.
Dumb question. If the working groups were to meet, does it have to be at City Hall, and does there have to be someone from the clerk's office present, or can they do at a coffee shop and discuss there, as long as it's noticed that that's where they're going to meet?
Mr. Neri, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we would have to notice it, and the location, somebody would have to be available to take minutes, and it would need to be recorded. It doesn't need to be streamed or in these chambers, if that's accurate.
Correct.
So that, I mean, we would have to take summary minutes similarly to how we do in here, which would just mean whoever the staff is, probably with our help, would need some help on what kind of the conversation was, because we'll still have to approve minutes. I mean, basically, we're talking about making our HPC meetings one meeting into now 4 meetings a
Right.
month. And once we establish them as a subcommittee, we'll have a quorum for those. So we can, visit at a more comfortable location.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be this formal.
Yeah,
We just-
I'm just worried about trying to meet.
around every meeting schedule in here.
You're right.
Yeah.
And if it is after hours, if the city hall is closed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a dumb question.
No.
Not a dumb question at all. We'll just have to get creative about that.
And additionally, it doesn't necessarily require staff. Again, keeping track of the minutes. If you're not required to record it, you can just keep a summary minutes. So as long as they're doing that and keeping track of the who's attending, what they talked about, what action or direction was taken, you're fine.
Okay.
Designate a chairperson and a secretary probably for
Right.
each subcommittee. Super doable.
Okay. So do we want to try and pick a chairperson this month? Or do you want people to think about it for this next month? Look at can you put the doodle poll back up
Yes.
so we can take a look at schedules?
With your approval, I can put together a Google form for this based on kind of what Hillary did and include the doodle poll schedule availability. And then I could perhaps send it to you and you can kick it out to the commission? Does that work?
sounds great, yeah,
Okay.
uh-huh.
Okay.
We don't want to overwhelm you on your
No.
first night.
No,
No,
we
and
do.
it's so hard when you're
Stop.
stepping in
It's
the
a work.
middle of something
yeah.
to understand. So if that would be helpful, and then you can disseminate from there.
Yes, I'd like to just see it, especially things that have gone on before, so that if there's any change, maybe we revisit this next year and redo the committees or anything like that. I kind of know how to do it as you have done it. And even though a city person isn't mandated to be there, I would like to attend as many of the work group meetings as I can, just to keep my thumb on what's going on and be of help.
That works.
We just get this out there for everybody to know, and because Jody's not here, and we've already talked about working together on the education.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah,
So I think she should be in on that too.
agree.
Agreed.
Yep.
I'll work on that this weekend and send it over.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Mr. President,
Ms. Neri?
I have some items that I think we need to add to the agenda that were things that we've talked about in the past and might just want to get back on our radar for next month, not to add to our agenda now, but just for next month with your approval.
Okay.
So one of which is Preservation Month is May. If we're going to do something, that is going to hit us real fast. We might want to plan Preservation Month next month as an item. I don't even know what SHPO's theme is this year. We need to figure that out and talk about that. The walking tour maps that the obelisk-shaped maps that are like the four-sided ones that MDC put up on the corner, those are terribly faded. They're like almost purpley pink. So I'd like to have an agenda item to approve a budget expenditure to replace those items. We normally do it about every other year, and we replace them in 18, and they're looking sad again.
Okay.
And then I have on my list two third grade tours. We have in the past got an update on what is happening with those or volunteer participation, and I haven't heard anything about them. I don't know if we're even still doing them. So I
Yes.
would be interested to hear about that. And if they need help, I have volunteered in the past. So,
Anything else, Ms. Neri?
No, sorry.
Okay. The only thing that I have to add is SHPO had grant money available. Applications were due the end of December. Ms. Jones submitted one for
We did for the funding to attend the conference,
Idaho Heritage Conference.
Idaho Heritage, yep.
I submitted one for Association of Historic Preservation Commissions for their conference in Tacoma. I also submitted one to start the process to getting the Speedway listed. So I will have a report back next month on where that is. We should have heard back from SHPO by that time as to whether or not we received any grant money. That's all I got. Anybody got anything else?
Mr. President,
Commissioner Everts.
I move that we adjourn this fantastically well-attended, riveting, and first Historic Preservation Commissioner meeting of 2020 in the presence of Councilwoman Perot.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Everts, seconded by Commissioner Neri to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Councilwoman, thank you.
It's my understanding that your prior council liaison was an active attender as well.
Very active here